all the different coming up, you will see that this meeting is being recorded, so that it can be shared with others and so that it can also be put onto our website. So we hope that that is okay with everybody. And it's wonderful to welcome my dear friend Paula. Um, Paula, it's amazing that this is what I have to do to get to see you a little bit more. Um, so I'll introduce Paula to start, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what we thought we would do for this evening. So I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read. But it's with huge fondness that I'm welcoming Paula into this space. Paula has been a dear friend and colleague for some time since I've met her first in Boston when were on the way to some conference or event. And we re-met again in New York last year when we were both heading off to John Kabat-Zinn's retreat. And the funniest part of us re-meeting is that we met each other on a train on the way to the retreat, and we were speaking so much that we mindfully missed our stop and got to the next stop and then realized we had to turn back. And that's, I guess, testimony to just the level of joy and connection when I'm around Paula. So Paula grew up in Colombia, and that, growing up in a war-torn society, and we'll ask her more about it, led her to her interest in peace building in different regions. And she's the co-director of Breathe International, which is an organization that brings peace building and mental health together. And it's driven by the restoration of human resilience, which I love. So Paula is really committed to promoting mindfulness for peace building in areas that are affected by armed conflicts. And she's worked with humanitarian teams around the globe, and her particular focus is on mindfulness and somatic perspectives. And she has a beautiful capacity to bridge understandings between the human and the more than human world in her work in really situations of severe crisis and difficulty. So she's worked with organizations like the United Nations and the Tibetan government in exile, and has done incredible work supporting populations in context of war and displacement. So I'm sure there's much more I could say, Paula, but I'd much rather just throw your voice into today's session. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Linda Kantor, and I work as a psychologist, and I'm a deeply committed founding member of the Institute for Mindfulness. It's lovely to see you all and to see the names. Many of you I know, and some of you that I don't, but I think we're in for a really beautiful and interesting conversation, given some of the names that I'm seeing in the room today. So welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Linda. So good to be here and see everyone, and thank you for coming this late. I'm actually in the Digital and Gadigal land in Australia. So for me, it's 5 a.m. in the morning. That's why we're meeting so late. So thank you so much for being here. And yeah, it's just very good to start the day with all of you. We were thinking with Linda that perhaps we could start with a little bit of a landing, a trauma-sensitive mindfulness landing practice. That is going to help me like to finish waking up. And also, yeah, I would tell you a little bit about my story. I have a presentation about the work that I have been doing in several regions with the UN, bringing trauma-sensitive mindfulness work into the field. Yeah, so having given this name, like David Treleaven maybe rings the bell for some of you. Though I use a lot of his work, I combine as well a lot of different things which go around cultural responsiveness that I wish to have a conversation with you all about. Yes, so the idea is that after the presentation, we just go into a conversation together. Because I know that there's people here that do this kind of work. So I think it's, for me, a beautiful space for us to share experiences and views on how is it that this makes sense in the field. Yeah, something else that I missed, Linda, from our
No,
plan?
no, Paula, just to thank you for waking up so early to be with us and done a few stretches, but that's, I'm sure, not enough to land and ground. Just, deep thank you and a bow to you for, really being committed to this community in the ways that you often are, and for being willing to share your experience and wisdom with us. And yeah, we really would appreciate, cameras, and the chat is open. So we'll listen to Paula and then we'll take some time to converse a little bit, and we'll open up to questions as well. So, yeah, but yes, let's start with a bit of a practice.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So giving ourselves a moment to land into the space in whatever place that you're in. Yes. I see some people maybe at home, or if you're at the office, or if because of the time, I don't know, you're getting home only now, or if you happen to be cooking. I don't know what's going on, but if it's possible to find yourself where you are. I'm taking a moment to, while you listen to me, if you're doing something else, or if you're fully listening, just landing and taking a moment to acknowledge what's happening for you at the moment. And this can happen with eyes open or closed as you feel more comfortable. Giving that mindfulness is not something that we have to do, but it's just a state of being that reminds us how we are in the moment. That helps us ground and remind us, where are you? What's going on? So if it's possible to orient in space, and that can again happen with eyes open or closed. Yes, I see some of you with your eyes closed already. So it is possible to orient yourself in space even with your eyes closed. Yes, like noticing for a moment, where is it that your body is in relationship to the space that you're in. So even with your eyes closed, you can know, yes, the door is there, the window is there. If you happen to have your eyes open, taking a moment to look around and engage with your eyes, and with the possibility of noticing, moving your head. Orientation is important for trauma-sensitive practices because it allows the body to understand, that it is in the present. It allows the mind through the body to understand that it is in the present, that it's here, that there's a connection to place. Yeah. And if possible, taking a moment just there to notice feet and the relationship of the feet with the ground, the rest of your body being held by your chair, by your bed, or the floor if you happen to be standing up, or the car if you happen to be on a car. And taking a moment to notice what's happening with your jaw. Yeah, bringing a space to the tongue inside your mouth, and making any movement if you need. In your head, in your shoulders. Yeah. So welcome. If you had your eyes closed, perhaps allowing the eyelids to move a little bit to invite some light and shade. If you had your eyes open, just noticing again the group and the 27 people who are tonight with us. And for the ones who are gonna watch this in another moment, for you to know that there's this amount of people in the space. Yeah. Yeah, so welcome you all again. For the ones who are just landing, my name is Paula Ramirez. And as Linda said in the bio, I am Colombian. And a lot of the interest in this work came because of my background, yes, having been born and grown in a place affected by an armed conflict when I was a child, kind of shaped my interest in the work that I do now with mindfulness. And it happened mainly because when I was 18, I liked to do music and I liked to play the flute. And then at some point, my hands didn't work anymore. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, that's, and luckily, I had this doctor. He said, that is not a body illness. He was like, that's a symptom in your body, but what is happening is something that you have to check inside yourself. And I was like, so what do I need to do? And he was like, go meditate, run marathons, do yoga. Not just like, and in doing that and other ancestral practices that belong to me and my culture, I could realize that what was happening is that I had the memory of a bomb that had exploded when I was a child, close to my place. And it was like a memory of me feeling like the blast of a bomb and not being able to do anything. And I just like went into a freeze state that showed up as an illness many years after. Yes, that bomb happened when I was 7, and the memory, like I actually could see it emerging when I was 18. So I started doing a lot of like inner, kind of work and understanding how is it that I can go to my interoceptive awareness, yes, which is this capacity of the body to feel itself in the present moment, which is one component that mindfulness allows us to do. Yes, like that felt sense of our body, to explore, the memories and what was happening there. And then I I went to Asia. I lived in Asia around 6 years. I worked with the Tibetan government, like exploring a lot about the mind-body connection in armed conflicted regions. Like how does that work? And then I went back to Colombia. I opened an NGO that was wanting to work mindfulness for students and teachers in places affected by the armed conflict. So if anyone is interested in the more education side, we can talk about it in another moment. You can reach out. But then working in education in places affected by armed conflicts, I realized about the trauma component. I was like, okay, yes, it's important for the alignment of oneself to be in the present. For a lot of mental health factors, it's important to be in the present, but it can be a mind place, no, for a lot of people, yeah, to be in the body and then suddenly, boom, you have a blast every time that you try to inhabit yourself in the present. So how does that work? And that led me to working after with the UN. I worked in Colombia with landmine survivors through mindful awareness and working with phantom limb pain. And then in South Sudan, working with survivors there taking mindfulness. And then a lot of my work shifted, which is what the presentation that I have, it's a very short one so that we can have time to talk. My work shifted around the mental health of first responders, people who are in the field, because I was working a lot with survivors. But then being in the field with the UN, I realized that the people who are in the front lines, whether they are psychologists or not, don't actually have the capacity to do the work that they are doing. And because of the polyvagal component, yes, like I started understanding how my own presence has a very important impact in the regulation and the emotional co-regulation of the other person. So if first responders are not, like grounding and in themselves, the service that they're gonna give, it's not gonna be great for people. They can have all the intention, but then the presence required in the field is not gonna be there. So I worked in several countries within this project, working with first responders. I worked in around 18 countries, some online, and the presentation that I'm going to give very short is a study that a university here in Sydney did, the UNSW University, around this work in 7 countries. So I'm going to share my screen. If you're interested in the actual presentation and the study, I can send it to you so that I don't go into a long thing here. But so the countries that are here highlighted, yes, Iraq, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Yemen, are the countries where we did this study, yes, to see what the impact of an MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction program, very modified, yes, modified in the trauma-sensitive way, but in the cultural responsiveness way, if it was effective for first responders. Yeah, so we have this happening in the mindfulness trainings, or like one is the practices, experiments, the body as a territory, yeah, to explore, and the present moment, a circle, yes, finding a common humanity, and topics around the brain, the nervous system, how our activation works. And then I started introducing, yes, like this kind of information, yes, and how important it is that mindfulness allows us to work with the interoception. Again, this knowing, this moment-to-moment knowing of what's happening in our body, the proprioception that is not mentioned here, which is this capacity of knowing where your body is in relationship to space, and neuroception, the moment-to-moment neural detection of safety and threat. Yes. And the alignment of this is very important to finding safety, to feel, if I'm safe or if I'm not safe in a place. Because a lot of what I was seeing is gender-based violence survivors, or people working on GBV who are survivors themselves in many times, being in a safe place, yes, in a place that is safe, in a women-friendly space, but never actually feeling safe within, yes, like never actually, feeling at the interoceptive level. There was something that didn't connect so that the body could feel more connected and the mind more, in itself and in the body. So that has an impact in mental health, and the alignment of this is very important, and that's what mindfulness practice do. Yes, that is what it allows. So what are the modifications that I started using? Yes, one of those modifications, and this work from David 311 that you may know, you may have read about his work, but Stephen Porges as well, with polyvagal theory, and my own work. This comes from Peter Levine, the titration and pendulation, like this coming to the present in a way that is pendulated, in a way that is maybe finding what is happening with your feet and what you keep listening outside. Yes, so you not bring all the attention to the present at once, because it may be too much. So in that way, the practice that we did at the start, yes, like the orientation is very important, so that you can work with an anchor outside and then coming in. And titration responds to a word that is in chemistry. If you have different liquids and you mix them very quickly, yes, they may burst. So it's slowly. Yes, the amount of coming to the present comes gently and slowly. Yeah. Invitational language is very important. And hopefully from a place that is very true to you. Yes, like I have heard a lot of people that try to do invitational language, and it's like maybe at some point, if you feel like it, and it's not like in a natural way that really understands that what you're doing is for the benefit of the people that you're working with, like, and that they have their autonomy and their own way of exploring. And so giving choices around the way in which you are offering the practice is important. This neuroception part as part of the possibility of knowing where are you, yes, so that the mind finds this possibility of orienting. It's important for neuroception, which is the assessment of safety. Interoception capacities, yes, like knowing what's happening inside your body, again, with a lot of titration. The polyvagal component, it's important because it's for first responders was very useful to understand how is it that their presence had an impact in working with others. And how the quality of the work, the quality of the human component, yes, it's not about how much you know. Yes, like it's important when you are in the field and you're a person who knows, yes, like things. But what is more needed in the field is your human presence, and the mindfulness allows that. The window of tolerance, this capacity of knowing when we are in hyperarousal states and coming back, to our window, not just for the mindfulness practice as such, like not just for the modification of the taking the mindfulness practice, but how is it that we can allow ourselves to learn how to come back to our window in daily basis. Dignity in being and not doing, like this possibility of, and this comes from a woman in Yemen, who she was saying once, like, this thing of non-doing is a revolutionary act, because when mindfulness practice becomes a thing that also you have to do, yet another thing that you have to do, takes us away, from that place that mindfulness actually is, which is like landing in the dignity of being. This is who I am in this moment. And the underlining of individual and collective and cultural resources. Yes. So I oftentimes tell the story in South Sudan when I worked with grave diggers, yes, and the reason why I started working with them is because the diagnosis was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I started doing mindfulness work with them, and the movement practice was actually the moment where they were grave digging, like that was the mindful movement. And in doing all these practices and in allowing the nervous system to rest, that is not here, but one of the main things that I use is resting, allowing the nervous system to come to this place and rest. If people can't do a body scan because they sleep, who cares? What people need is to sleep, yes? And what happened when the nervous system was a little bit more regulated through sleep, through bringing awareness, was them saying, what has been happening is that we haven't been able to do these ceremonies to bury our dead people. We have just been burying one after the other, but not really with the ceremonies that should be there. And we did symbolic one, and all the symptoms started subsiding after. But this as well can happen, I don't know, like last year in Egypt, we ended up including a lot of the Muslim practices into the work. Ramadan was a big part of it, but then the prayer, the call to prayer, and how is it that the call to prayer is a mindfulness act in itself. The amazing thing about mindfulness for me is all the emotional regulation that can happen, all the connection that we can have in the present moment. But what is most interesting to me is the emergence of wisdom. Yes, the emergence of individual and collective wisdom around resources. Which are the resources that as collective have allowed us to be here, despite war, despite displacement? Because it gives room to that remembering. Yes, the strengths that collectives have built. And I passed the hour. We said with Linda that we were gonna give time, I don't know, like 22 past to open for conversation. But this is mainly what I wanted to share. The results of the evaluation. I can share all this with you. Yeah, I don't feel I can pass very quickly through this. Yeah, like what work, the mind body connection, the cultural responsiveness, the trauma sensitivity, the calling to autonomy. No, this way of like, if you feel like moving, if you feel like standing up, if you feel like, yeah, mindfulness, not from a place of like people having to do what I say, but it's just like, no, this is an experimentation, no place. This is a lab. Like I put a little bit of an input, and people do whatever it is that they're called to do, because the idea is for open space to listen, no? Like opening space to listening to oneself and what's needed. And I can't possibly know that. Identity, no? Like going back into what your identity is, the connection with others, with oneself, and with the more than human world as well. Yeah. So this is it. I think I'm just gonna leave this slide for a moment there so that you can see. Yeah, Linda, I don't know how you feel about going to questions maybe, or
Well, thank you, Paula. Yeah, it's so much to just receive your story, Paula. And so first of all, I really want to acknowledge that doctor, all those years ago that told you to go out and, mindfulness and run marathons and go on that inner journey. And I guess the understanding that mind-body link and how that really kind of puts you into a trajectory in your life of, I guess, working with your own trauma and then being able to share that gift of your own healing with others. And I'm sure it's an ongoing process. So I guess I really want to just, every time I hear you, I'm so touched by your story, and also so touched by the authentic way in which you share it, and that your openness to discovery. Because it feels like, certainly when I started teaching mindfulness all those years ago, 20 something years ago, our understanding of trauma and trauma sensitivity was just not there in these kinds of ways. And although I kind of recognize the value of these practices and the potential of these practices, and really believed in these practices and the capacity to bring healing in all kinds of different contexts, I think what was missing was this combination of what you've brought in and what you've shared today, this combination of the somatic work, the new understandings of trauma, or the understandings of trauma trauma that have been around for a while but haven't really been heard or used, and just the beautiful ways in which you have been able to weave that into the work that you do in the most difficult situations. So, every time I hear that story about the grave diggers, my heart just really feels the power of that, and also the enormous suffering of behind the story, and how just something like being open to reclaiming those rituals can shift and bring healing in ways that we often aren't taught in a formal MBSR. So I guess that's a long way of kind of really just honoring the work that you do, and understanding, and the understanding that you're offering us, that trauma in itself can be a catalyst to awakening and healing if it's held in the right kinds of ways. And I guess that's the gift of the work that you're doing. So maybe I'll kick the ball off in terms of asking questions. And then I'll also just invite people to put questions in the chat and to put their hands up when they're ready. But I guess my first question is really something around you as Paula, and how you've experienced stepping into these very difficult situations, and how what has helped you to create space inside of yourself to meet these situations with the creativity that I'm hearing you meet them. I guess I'm curious around what it's been like for you, and also just you bring up something so important about us, and this capacity, our own presence, and how that is so enormous in the capacity to regulate with another. And this is so much of what we're bringing into and thinking about in terms of our tier 1 training in AMISA. So yeah, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, mm. what I feel about what you say is that mindfulness for me is like a systemic practice, no? And the reason why I shifted my work and I started working with first responders is because the like I was saying, the way in which we regulate, the way in which we get to know ourselves, it's equal to the way in which we collaborate. Yes, like it impacts the way in which we collaborate, the way in which we relate to others. Um, and in that sense, like the coherence and the correspondence of that, it's very inspiring to me. And in that way, like that inspires me, like to keep opening this space in me, with the practice. And I feel that what helps me being in these places, it's the practice in itself, which is not a thing that I have to do. Like I often tell my teams and the groups, it's a quality. It's not something that you have to do. It's a quality of being. It's like shifting the relationship that we have with time somehow. No, it's like knowing that what is happening in this moment right now. Who am I being moment to moment? No, and that for me is very important, as well as, yeah, as you said, like trauma held in the right way can be a great tool for, like it can become a great resource, no? Like this thing of like keep looking at the wound that is where the light enters you. It's very beautiful, no? And for me, what happened with my hands, it was the possibility for me recovering ancestral knowledge from my mom, from my grandmother as well. And the first, when I started traveling, I asked her, like, how am I gonna like do this and go away? And she was like, your feet are always gonna touch the land that you belong to, because you belong to the land, you're indigenous to land. Yes. So this constant feeling of belonging, and this knowing that each land has its knowledge, and it has had its own ways to communicating with humans, it's always there, so that, like that, mindfulness capacity of being connected with my body, with myself, but as well knowing that I'm in a systemic correspondence. I'm in correspondence. Can I listen to the resources that are out there? So that has been very important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess what's landing, one of the things that's landing there for me is the importance of time and slowing down. And often, you know, certainly I find in my own life when things are too speeded up, you know, we lose that sense of connection and belonging, and remembering that the ground is here to support us and hold us, and just those simple that simple sense of being able to resource kind of gets lost in the frenetic kind of stress of busyness. And so it sounds like you're naming important about our relationship with time and this capacity to tap into wisdom that's bigger than ourselves, and that kind of ancestral.
Yeah, it's when you say that, it makes me think about the sector that I work in, yes, which is the humanitarian sector, and everything is like life or death, yes, and it reminds me a lot about a moment where I was in a camp that could hold 15,000 people, and from one day to the other, we had 35,000 people coming in because of an armed attack. And that day, we had to give a lot of food, yes, because it was, and with my team, we were just like giving food. And after the first day, we sat with the team, and it was like, we're not going to make it until Friday. Yes, like we're not going to make it a week. And so it was like, okay, let's try and do something. Let's try tomorrow when we have to pick up the sack of sorgo. Yes, let's just like acknowledge that you're picking it up, noticing what is happening with your breath, the weight, and give it to the person, and give it, and give it, and give it. And towards the end of that day, we gave the same amount of food, but we were much less tired than the first day. The first day, the response was not a response. It was like a reaction. It was just like, no. The second day, it was a response. So we were still working with the ticking off of time. Yes, we needed to give food. It was now, quickly. And at the same time, there's this component of like, yes, it is about a quality in being, in the relatedness with it's a quality. What's the quality that we get to have? And this thing with time is interesting to me now, that we don't, with time and with resting, we don't really know. We're so used to doing that it's common that when we go on holidays, we need holidays from holidays because we don't know how to rest, or we get sick when we go to holidays. Yes. It's just like, how is it that quality in being can be called constantly to find that place of dignity? That place of like dignity that gives a little bit of like presence in being alive. And that goes beyond the shape of meditation, sitting still, no? Like that can have movement, can have cooking, can have ritual. Yeah.
So powerful, Paula, and you know, I'm really appreciating the real lived experience of that story. It's very, as Lisa said in the chat, they're very beautiful and very powerful. And I guess a reminder that, you know, it sounds like it wasn't necessarily even the slowing down on that second day, but it was the awareness how that giving was almost turning the movement into a ritual, into a meditation. And it sounds like it was that really kind of shifted the relationship. And so I love that reminder for all of us, that sometimes some days are just busy, but this capacity to, you know, to meet it in a different way. And then I'm also really appreciating this naming of rest. You know, it's certainly something that, you know, I've been thinking about a lot in terms of, you know, our teacher training and the new tier 1, and, you know, just how certainly when I started teaching mindfulness, I feel like it almost became like there was so much giving and doing in the teaching of it.
Mm.
Resting and restoring and really honoring this enormous gift of being able to come from a more rested, restful space. So I really appreciate the naming of that, because I think very often when we talk about mindfulness, there's this idea of like we have to be awake, but what's missing is this kind of other polarity of and restful, and inner rested and rested state from which other things can arise.
Yeah, for me, when I hear you, it's like the exploration around safety. No, most of the time, the people that I work with are constantly into a sympathetic state, yes, which is like a nervous system that is in fight flight response, yes, and there's constantly this quality that is just very contracted because it's like this all the time. And it's interesting that the most important and first thing that I offer is just a place to rest. And it happens that oftentimes when the people that I work with like see that, the women-friendly spaces become a space where they stop trying to do many things. Yes, like weaving and singing, and it's just like, yes, that's possible, but that safe space perhaps is the only moment where that people are going to be able to rest. And how can you awaken without being able to rest? It's not happening. No. One of the other things that is very interesting and powerful of the work by Nazaret Castellanos, which is a Spanish neuroscientist, is this I don't know, like discovery, I don't know how to call it, but like this thing around the brain understanding safety through, of course, what's happening in our body, but mainly what's happening with our hands and with our gestures. Yes. So this thing of like finding resting and perhaps allowing the brain to understand that is safe by allowing the hands to open, giving room to the jaw, yeah, the tongue inside the mouth, yes, because if we're constantly contracted, then we try to go to bed, we try to sleep, but we can't because the brain is constantly like, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe. I'm in a sympathetic state going to bed. No. So what I have found in those spaces is that through bringing, no, like a scan, yes, is the quality of just being there and noticing allows people to give themselves to gravity. That quality, again, it's a quality. And again, the space becomes a place to sleep. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, it feels like such a honoring, to actually allow that space to sleep and allow that space to let go and to rest. So
Mm.
I see that there are some questions coming in through the chat, and I really want to give space to some of the voices. And I just want to check. It's really nice to hear the question from the voice. So I just want to check, Katerina, if you wanted to, I can read it, or if you want to actually speak it into the room.
Yes, that's okay. Yes. Paula, I was wondering that with your quality of listening, and I heard you talk about emergent wisdom, whether you had integrated wisdom from cultures you worked with other than Colombia.
Yeah. One of them, as I think that I tell this story because it's very meaningful to me, as in South Sudan was the place where I actually realized the emergence of these resources in a culture that was not mine. Yes, and I working, giving mindfulness practices to newer people, and 7 men who had like buried bodies and bodies and bodies. Yes, and then suddenly them saying like, we haven't done our ritual, we haven't buried our people in our way. So that involved working with barks of trees that we didn't have close because we were in the camps. So we had like to create this kind of fabric with cotton. So no, like we had to go like to women and elders asking what is the fabric? Is this too thick? Is this too thin? Like no, like the co-creative process of the symbolic ritual, because many of the elements in nature that were used for the ritual were not there. We had to make them with what we had. Yes. But then again, the power of the elements, but the power of symbol is the symbol. No, that's one place, but I can think about it was interesting in Ukraine in 3 years ago that I was there, working with soldiers, and one of them at some point was saying like, I remember that when I was a child, my grandmother used to bless or to protect spaces and myself with garlic. And then like they started saying, me too, me too, me too. And then they conducted a ceremony or like a practice with garlic that was definitely not in my bucket list. You know? And it just was like that, no? Or again, like in Egypt last year with people from North Sinai that support people from Gaza coming in. And we just like went into the Muslim prayer, you know, as part of Muslim prayer is a mindfulness practice, and it happens 3 times per day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for those beautiful examples. I just want to check, is my voice really soft? Can everybody hear me? You can hear me.
Yeah.
Great. Really beautiful examples. And, you know, I really appreciate how in those examples, there's the honoring of the place, there's the honoring of the rituals, there's the honoring of like an immersion quality, as opposed to going in with a certain structure of this is what we're going to do. It sounds like part of this work is really about being able to listen to the field and to trust that people have their practices and you know, that willingness to learn and to be open to that emergence. So I really want to just kind of name that. It really feels, you know, that is the lived experience of this practice, as opposed to like, it has to look this way.
Yeah. The more I do this work and work with the practice, the less I do. It's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Please. And I see that you have a question, and I just want to check if you want to. I know you're struggling with your camera, but I don't know if you want to put your voice in, otherwise I'll read it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It is a very insightful presentation. My question to you was whether you found that there was a difference between the needs of women as opposed to men in humanitarian settings when it comes to the kind of support they need, the safe spaces and so forth. And I wanted to know how you handled that. Because I know, especially when it comes to GBV in humanitarian settings, there's a lot written about the specific needs of women. How have you in these different countries that you've worked in managed that? Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Yes, well, one of the agencies that I worked for in the past, because the Trump's administration now cut all the funds for doing mental health work and for working on gender-based violence, which is very sad. So one of the agencies that I used to work with, UNFPA, they would have this motto that said, how was it? The bodily autonomy is what needs to be worked with women and girls, you know, like that was like the motto, like how is it that we can go into bodily autonomy so that we are owners of our body in gender-based violence response. And for me, bringing it back to the mindfulness question is, what does that mean? Like, how does bodily autonomy looks like? Like, how am I gonna own and claim my body if I don't feel safe in it? Yeah, so for me, working a lot with GBV has been, how is it that an act of resistance against violence is actually finding yourself, finding who you are, knowing that alignment of your interoception, of your inner capacity of feeling yourself in relationship to space, yes, is finding again that you're safe. Yeah, it's finding again this possibility of like, okay, I can again own my life, own my body, but that's something that happens through mindful awareness. And what I have found is that in the field, the way in which women care, it's different from men. Yes, like there is like a quality in caring that is, and that helps, like that supports the collective spaces, their own selves as well. There's different ways in caring, but I'm just gonna leave it there around the bodily autonomy and how important mindfulness is for that.
Paula, I just want to follow that on a little bit, because I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about, finding safe space in bodies that are carrying trauma, or bodies where shame is present, and maybe just a little bit around, what you've learned in working with the body, the practices like the body scan, in MBSR we have 40 minutes. Is just maybe if you could share a little bit around, working with bodies that have been violated, and, what you've learned from the field.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to say this again because it's the most important learning that I've had in the field, which is resting. Yes, like the possibility of finding that alignment. Yes, that finding that I am safe in my body. Yeah, it can't happen if I'm in a constant sympathetic activation, and sympathetic activation happens as well. Like it is a quality that is contracted, that is constantly telling the brain that I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. But bringing people to the space to do a mindfulness practice right away is me telling people that I know what they need. And that's not useful. Yes, it's just like, it's like I feel what it's important for me in working with people who have experienced any level of trauma is I actually don't know. Yes, it's just like what is it, how is it that you can come to the space so that you can explore whatever that is gonna bring you that capacity of connecting. Yes, like I have people that come to the space and they don't want to sit, they want to stand up. And they stand up while other people sleep. Like, it's not like resting and now everyone sleeps. No, it's just like finding the space of like this way of, this space is for you. How is it that you want to be in the space? What is it that you need to listen? Oftentimes it happens that people fall asleep. Yeah. And from there, finding that safety in like, oh, I haven't slept this way in years. Yes. What is there? What happens? Yes, like you start pulling the thread, but a thread that is not mine, is not me giving the thread, is me pulling what is there? What is there? What is there? No. And again, like this titration, no, like this, and the pendulation, like slowly, what feels safe, if it's a little bit, no, going there to that place of safety and allowing yourself to dissociate or go wherever you go, no, like it doesn't matter. But like if you find a little bit of like that little bit, it's enough. That little bit, it's enough. No, like I often, it's like when the important thing of this is not to be a great piano player, but to bring your hands back to the piano. Bring the hands back to the piano. It doesn't matter. No? What feels safe? What feels possible?
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's so important what you're saying, just, you know, the honoring of even the dissociation, the honoring of the body's need to sleep and rest, and you know, just the, I guess, the trusting. For me, it certainly has been about learning to trust the practice over time, and to trust that the body has its own wisdom in restoration if we allow it, if we support it to do so in a safe way. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah, in a way that, yeah, that really honors and allows listening for what's needed, you know, with gentleness. And because I working with first responders means as well that I work with people that have in place a lot of self-care practices. For example, running every morning, doing yoga every morning. And then when we explore, those are things that they impose themselves to do. And a lot of my humanitarian friends are runners. Like they are people who are hardcore sport people. But oftentimes it's just like when we explore about it, it's like a demand. It's a constant demand, but it's not really a listening. No, like, do you really need that? Or today you need just to go for a walk? Today maybe you need something else. It's like, okay, it's not another thing that you have to do. It's listening.
It really is, Paula. And I think in our society, our tendency is to be on the other side, to kind of really want to do and do and do. And that kind of looks like this, but it's not, when it has that kind of pushing quality. So I'm really appreciating the softness of what you're saying. So I see that Sue has a connected question, and I just want to bring Sue, if you're willing to speak or put your camera on. Otherwise, again, I'll read it.
Hi, yeah, no, quite happy to speak. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Everything I'm listening to is absolutely amazing. And I really, I like what you were saying about working with the first responders. It's part of what we do as well with our, excuse me, our all ability units. But we actually create spaces at our South African police stations for GBVF victims, and it's sort of a debrief area. My involvement came about because of my involvement in disability. So my first thing is to make the area disability friendly, that anybody who is blind, deaf, in a wheelchair can access. And I feel after listening to you, Paula, that I've overlooked some important things. So my question was, how do I make that space kinder and more mindful for the person who would be using it, with the victim who would be with the first responder? So any advice you have would be fabulous. Thank you. Any advice?
Yeah, so if I hear you well, is which kind of advice can you give to the first responders that work with GBV to be more kinder? Yes. I find that kindness or the quality of mindfulness is not something that you learn like with a PowerPoint presentation or with a tip, or no. It is a lot about exploring, like inviting people and working with first responders to work in themselves. Like for me, it has been very moving to work in the gender-based violence world and realize that many first responders have been survivors, and they have never ever like worked with what that means. Like they decided to go into that work like to claim justice, and as a way of like the exploration of their own kindness and coming back to like, why is it that I do this job? Like asking the question, why is it that you want to be a first responder of whatever that is? like what is there, no? The question that allows people to explore and see inside their own story, because probably what is behind is a story that is tense, like a tension that creates, no? And if that story can find a little bit of ground and kindness, that's the way to give kindness to others. No, it's just like this, asking the questions about why is it that we do what we do, and why is it that we want to work with people? Why?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Sue, can I check if that answers the question, and is there anything else that was needed? Yeah.
Maybe just a little on the actual physical area. Is there anything in particular I could put in there? We have weighted blankets, which are amazing things. In particular with autistics, they work really well. Actually, anybody who's feeling quite hysterical, a weighted blanket is a great tool to have. But is there anything else you could advise, sort of, stuff-wise, thing-wise, to put into a room like ours? We have all the sensory toys, we have the communication devices. I would hate to miss something, and I'd love to know if there's something else that could assist in the room.
Yeah, interesting. So interesting your question, because this is a conversation that I have a lot in the field, in women-friendly spaces, no? And like there's a lot of like architecture and design in the spaces, even if it's in the middle of like refugee camps where we wish we had, often the mattresses are just like what's the like shelter fabric, like there's no mattress, no, it's just like dirt and the shelter mattress, like, or fabric there, no? In other places it's a little bit more, has other elements. But a lot of the conversation that we are in right now in different spaces it's not only about the space. Again, it's about the quality of the people who are in the space. And oftentimes that is what we miss. And we think about a lot of elements and objects and things that we could have. But then the person who is there in the room is constantly activated, or, and then it's like that is, if there's anything, if you only have a space with mattresses of fabric from the shelters, what brings the quality to me in the room is the quality of the person who is seated there. Because and oftentimes what happens to me is that it's not the amount of knowledge you have, as I said before, like it's not knowing, it's just being. Because if we're working with people that don't find safety, yes, and then we are a person that is not feeling safe in oneself, then it's going to be always a little bit of activation, and the space is not going to be as safe, or it's not going to offer as much. Yeah. Thanks, Sue. Amina. Hi, sorry. Linda.
Sorry, I'm going to be very quick. I just wanted to build on what my colleague there mentioned. So when she's asking more about what she can have, and from what Paula has talked about, I'm thinking that Paula is touching on resource, internal resource, that what one brings internally becomes more important. So therefore, perhaps at the police station, if they can take more time, maybe to engage meaningfully, so to listen to those people, they are able perhaps to get it from what a person is feeling better than what is surrounding them in a room. I might be wrong. I'm just trying to build on Paula's case, where she literally talked about what you bring. So that internal resource, if they can give themselves time to listen and listening to understand and maybe give their best, I have a feeling that perhaps they can get the best of a person. And once you get the best of a person, you're able to work with it. I'm just thinking, yeah, just a thought. Thank you.
Exactly that. Exactly that. I mean, yeah, internal resources. Yeah. Mhm.
What
Yeah.
you say reminds me of, I think it's Peter Levine who says trauma is not what happens to us, but it's what we hold inside of us in the absence of an empathetic witness. So it's actually about that empathetic witness. That would be maybe the most important part of what's in that room in terms of holding that space of the trauma.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I find for me, mindfulness is an amazing tool to develop that capacity to hold complexity, to be a witness. Mm.
So I'm aware of the time, and I would just want to check if there are, if I've missed any important questions that need to be asked, please just raise your hand or step in. Or even it doesn't have to be a question, even a comment or a reflection.
There was a question from Beth Feldman on mindfulness in education.
Ah, yes. I meant mindfulness in education. Yes. So we like the first thing that we developed as NGO was working with teachers and students in schools. So we have a whole program. Mm.
Can you perhaps elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, yeah. So we have a program that starts working on 6 sessions with teachers, and then after the 6 sessions, we work. They work with students. So we support the teachers working with students and then with families as well. And we have a specific program for the psychologists that oftentimes in the schools that I worked with are not psychologists, but are the people who are in charge of the harmony of the school. Yeah, and then it is a program that runs over a year, and then the second year is integrating mindfulness into subjects, into class like maths or biology or. Yeah.
May I come in?
Yes, babe.
Paula, thank you so much for that. I asked the question because I do have a special interest in teachers who are very under-resourced at the moment. And when you say we have a program, how do we learn from that program, access it, or be trained in it? Because there's a huge need, especially in our vulnerable communities that are low resourced and high demand. Teachers are taking so much strain, and I think that applies to all our public servants, also the police and the nurses and all people that are engaging in the public service. Definitely could benefit from this kind of support if we could get it to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Yes, the program is in Spanish, but I have a couple of pagers in English that can give you like an idea of the outline of the program. If you're interested in a training, we can talk, and definitely there's a way of translating the material and doing a training of all those components. Yes, we have the teachers, the students, like the people who are again in charge of the harmony and the second year. It can all be translated. Thanks for your work, Bev. Yeah, there's a lot of need of working with teachers, no, who are first responders as well.
Thank you, Bev, for bringing in all of those different communities that, you know, could so benefit from these practices. Yeah. And I guess that's part of why, you know, we've shifted the EMISA training to what we're doing now, which is really about, you know, initially learning how to share practices in a trauma-sensitive way, as a way of really being able to help people in different communities, you know, who have huge needs, kind of be able to give just maybe a taste of the practice, but in a way that's trauma. So I'm aware that you know, we said we would stop around 9:15 because it is we did have a later start. So before I close, I just want to check if there's any like really pressing question that you're sitting with, or comment that anybody's sitting with. And if not, I'm going to invite Paula maybe just to close with just a short, you know, you spoke about going to sleep with a relaxed, you know, jaw and all of that. So maybe you could just guide us to close in a little practice. And I really want to thank you so much for this amazing conversation and for the work that you do. You know, this is you know, the capacity to address trauma in this compassionate way, and also to sit with the not knowing. You know, I love how you really were able to articulate, you know, sometimes we just don't know, but we're learning all the time through an emergent field and through just kind of really listening and through our own practice. I really want to thank you for sharing your presence with us and your wisdom with us. And I'll hand over to you to just guide us out.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for this space, and thank you, everyone. Yeah. Yeah, maybe taking a moment to again notice where you are. Yeah, to close as we started. Yes, which is with orientation. And orientation as well, because I feel that orientation is a way to digesting information. No, we not only digest food. And we've been for an hour and 15 minutes talking about these topics and trauma, and like allowing yourself just to notice where you are. That can happen with eyes open or closed. Again, orienting in space as a way to giving room to digestion. Yes, of what was heard, what was said. I'm bringing, if possible, attention towards your feet, if that's a place that feels possible for you, or a place that helps you feel that you are grounded. Yes, if you happen to be seated, and then it's your seat bones that give you that awareness of the presence that your body has with the place that you're in, that you're inhabiting. I'm taking a moment to notice what is it that your hands are doing. Yeah. And allowing them to rest if possible. Or if you're doing something while you're listening to me, just noticing what's the quality of your hands as they work, as they do what they do. Bringing awareness to the rest of your body, the spine. And again, allowing the tongue to feel its place inside your mouth. If it's possible to notice the distance there is between the upper teeth and the lower teeth. And if possible, bringing awareness to the base of the skull, like that connection that the base of the skull has with the jaw. And noticing there what happens with your breath, if possible. Anchoring yourself into that first place that allowed you to find yourself in the present. Maybe the feet, the seat bones, your hands. Yeah. And if you had your eyes closed, allowing them to start opening. And as we close, if you feel like, yeah, that you want to send, I don't know, wishes to someone you know or you don't know much, but that this whole conversation made you think about sending good wishes to the person or to a collective. And again, that can happen with eyes open or closed. As you allow yourselves to come back to the group where we have still 23 participants. Yeah, noticing here the people who are around. The cameras on, the ones who have their cameras off. Yeah. Thank you for your presence. Thanks for being here. And Linda, Simon, I'm so happy to see you. Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Good night.
And good night. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.